If you sum up all the programs and boosts that have been decided at national level and at EU level, we reach 2.8 trillion euro, which obviously is a huge number, the biggest help program ever done for the economy since World War II, and quite comparable to what has been announced in the United States. Now, the key in Europe is to make sure that we have a coordinated effort so that the solidarity works.
Fair enough. I want to come on now to the topic of Corona bonds and a Corona fund, if you will. The Dutch finance minister has said that a Corona fund would be a gift for distressed economies. Not a loan, not a guarantee, but a gift. I'm curious what you make of this kind of thinking. And, is this going to be too little too late?
Well, Luxembourg has assigned a letter of 9 countries that have made a lot of proposals of what should be done in this crisis. One of the proposals is the Corona bond, but there are many others. In the program you just showed what Vice President Dombrovskis described as the SURE program, which I think is the key program for this crisis in terms of saving jobs, saving competence in companies, and making sure that when the sanitary crisis, the health crisis is over, companies can kickstart their activities again because they have kept their labor force. Now, coming to the Corona bonds, it's one way of ensuring liquidity at a good price for all countries, but there are quite a few other ideas in the air that are being aired right now, and we have a Eurogroup on Tuesday, and I'm quite confident that in terms of solutions to this crisis, we will come up with good ways of ensuring that liquidity to all the countries.
Pierre, very good morning to you, sir. In 1948, the Marshall Plan transferred $12 billion to Europe as well, equivalent to $128 billion at today's level. Now, Ursula von der Leyen has talked about a Marshall Plan in the next budget. Who's going to pay for it, sir?
Well, the good thing is in this very difficult period that interest rates are very low. So I think a lot of this will be handled through loans that can be given at very low interest rates. We also know that the European Central Bank is ready to buy up sovereign loans in a very huge quantity. And if you add to that the European Stability Mechanism has 410 billion euro ready to be used in such a crisis, you realize that the money is available, the finance is available for coping with this. And let's not forget that this crisis is a very short one in the sense that it's a kind of a V-shaped crisis. It goes down very quickly, but because it was provoked by a virus, but it's also possible, and we do everything we can in Europe to make that it happens that way, that we can restart the economy very quickly.
Yes, sir, but my worry is if the crisis is a short one, which we all, of course, hope it is, the results of it will be very long as well. For instance, in the great financial crisis, Europe took on a lot of debt. Every single penny of that debt, bar some notable exceptions like Germany, every single penny elsewhere is still there. 180% debt to GDP in Greece, 130% debt to GDP in Italy and elsewhere.
Well, it's true, and we've heard that in the past, that you should fix the roof when the sun is shining. Put differently, it means that you better make sure your public finances are in good order and you reduce debt when the economy is growing. Unfortunately, not every country has been able to achieve that, but that's why we need European solidarity, and that's what we will discuss, and I'm pretty confident we'll decide on Tuesday in the Eurogroup how we can make sure that European mechanisms like the European stability mechanisms, like the European Central Bank, like the European Commission, can make sure all countries can benefit from what can be called a Marshall Plan.
Can I just jump in just to follow the line, really? I mean, there are a number of alternative ways in which this could be resolved ultimately, sir, and that would be debt forgiveness. It could be debt monetization. There are other routes. Would you support any of these particular programs at this point rather than ultimately burdening the national governments for years to come, as was done with Greece after the GFC?
No, I think there are much better ideas in the air. I would, for example, mention the proposal of the French finance minister, Bruno Le Maire, of a kind of fund that is going to be set up very quickly with contributions of member states to finance investments in the area of healthcare in areas that are necessary to restart the economy. So the answer to this crisis is certainly not to focus on debt relief or debt issues, but is on making sure that we invest enough in the future, in our infrastructure, in digitalization, in healthcare. What we've learned from the crisis of 2008 is exactly that. If you put too much emphasis on reducing the debt too quickly, you really have a recession, and a strong one, and deflation. And we should not do that mistake. So the answer is, after the sanitary crisis, to invest. And that's what Europe is going to do.
And that was the message after the GFC, and we ended up with the Juncker Fund. And I think we're still waiting to know what the positive benefits were to European economies from that.
Well, I think that fund was extremely successful because, first of all, it had a huge leverage. I mean, the money that was put in as a guarantee by the European Investment Bank and the EU Commission could be used to the tune of 15 times as much, and has really done a very good job. In fact, that's one idea that's in the air, is to create a guarantee fund for small and medium-sized enterprises in this crisis. And that fund would be, again, monitored and done by the European Investment Bank. And with such a guarantee, you can make sure that small and medium-sized companies that normally have difficulties to access finance, to get that through the EU guarantee through the European Investment Bank. So I think also here, experience has shown that this works.
We've just had the Italian March Services PMI number through at 17.4. That represents a catastrophe for the Italian services sector and businesses that operate in that space. It was 52.1 in February. That is a massive contraction in activity. What do you tell those small Italian businessmen and women in services companies that are looking at their businesses collapsing at this point? How do you reassure them that Europe is in this together and that help is coming?
Well, we know that time is of the essence here, and that is why we are working day and night, all the countries of the Eurogroup and all the countries of the European Union, to find a package by next Tuesday that is credible and that can be implemented fast. And I think the ideas that have been put down are workable, and that all the institutions working together, I mean the European Commission, European Investment Bank, the ESM, European Central Bank, together with the member states, acting together, have a lot of leverage on how we can alleviate the burdens of companies. Let's not forget that most European countries have implemented a kind of short labor scheme that costs a lot of money, but that means that the competences and the know-how is kept in the companies, and that the rebound can start very quickly.
Minister, I hope it all happens as you say. We will look forward to catching up with you on a program soon. Pierre Gramagna, the Minister of Finance for Luxembourg.
Thank you very much.
Coming up on Squawk Box, the U.S. employment picture worsens as jobless claims double on the previous week. We'll have more after the break.
Start your day earlier and smarter. On top of the news.
Political turmoil and the Eurozone heating up.
Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with a TuneIn podcast. For expert analysis straight from the WWE to Steve Austin's no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities. Search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to discover what's happening in the app and around the world. Be the first to know about upcoming games and the hottest new music. Follow @TuneIn and always be in the know.
Did you know TuneIn doesn't just live here on your smart speaker? From the audio that moves you to the audio that gets you moving. Soundtrack your every movement with the free TuneIn app. Available on your phone or tablet. Download TuneIn from the App Store today.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Not all heroes wear capes, but most wear tights.
And here we go. Now it's underway. Cover on Rowan. Wait a second.
Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with a TuneIn podcast. For expert analysis of the latest WrestleMania, turn on the WWE podcast. Or listen to the Steve Austin Show for no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities.
It's good to be here tonight. It's an empty building.
For these and more, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
4 seasons. It's time.
The American spirit, inherently competitive, always driven with a hunger, ambition, and an appetite to succeed. The pursuit of prosperity can be unpredictable and thrilling. From breakthroughs to breakdowns, the launches and the crashes. Perseverance is paramount. Knowledge essential.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box here on CNBC.
That's what drives us. It's in our DNA to provide the information you need wherever you are to propel your dreams forward.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. Well, we have more services PMIs for you. We already had Spain and Italy, which both showed a catastrophic pullback in services activity in the month of March. Now France has reported its final services PMI at 27.4. That is worse than the Flash number. Flash was looking at 29 for the services PMI. Putting it together with what we already knew from the manufacturing side of things, France's final composite PMI came in at 28.9. Also, accordingly, worse than Flash estimates of 30.2. So France, much like Italy, much like Spain, has seen a massive contraction in its services sector. And that would, of course, correspond to the lockdown that we've seen. So in a way, this is evidence that the lockdowns are working and people are not out. Manufacturing and services activity is on pause.
The Italian number was a disaster, wasn't it? Let's be quite frank about this. As you look at the headline number, it's poor, but as you drill into it, what's really worrying is in the new business area, the service sector dropped even further to 13.8, which is really ugly, from 52.2 in February. And the movement around the business activity number dived to 17.4 from 52.1 in February. So again, a huge distance from those February numbers as we look at the March figures here coming through from Italy. Spain's were very bad. And as you just pointed out, I mean, these are recessionary-like, very serious recessionary-like conditions from the French data as well.
Absolutely. And a little bit more detail on the French data. It's painting an ugly picture. This is some commentary from the IHS Market economists, painting an ugly picture for sure for the French services sector, with output and new business falling at a record pace amid shutdowns due to the coronavirus. And to put a number on it, 1 in 5 private sector workers is on a state-subsidized furlough scheme to try to cope with the collapse. So massive use or attempted use of these schemes that are being put in place to try to cushion the blow that workers will feel of these lockdowns.
You know, we're hanging on here for the German PMI data, but it's interesting. We've also got a snapshot here of new passenger car registration numbers, and these are source data points that we're getting crossing from Reuters at the moment. And I'll just mention them in passing because we've spent a lot of time talking about this Daimler credit line and the impact on the autos business and the meetings with Chancellor Merkel, the new passenger car registration numbers that are being suggested here by Reuters to sources, down 20% year on year, down 30% year on year in March. So down 20% year on year in the quarter, the first quarter, down 38% year on year in March. So that just shows you, again, I think, if you needed the message hammering home, that the data points continue to point to this, pardon the pun, handbrake that's gone on in the economy around Europe and in Germany as we look to consumption patterns being distorted by these lock-ins that we have across Europe.
And of course, the consumption patterns is just one side of what's going on here. The demand side, Germany, manufacturing heavy region within the Eurozone, is obviously already dealing with the headwinds that were created by China's shutdown, having massive supply issues. And when we got the manufacturing data out earlier this week for all of the Eurozone countries, we saw that, they're having massive supply issues as well. So it's the compounding of the demand side, the reduction in consumption as people go into lockdown with those existing pressures on the supply chain from the lockdown in China. So this has just gone, from headwind to headwind. And we're just a little bit, we're just waiting, moments away from this German data, the German services data coming through. But if it's anything like what we've seen from Italy, Spain, France, it will be very dire this morning.
Let's just have a look at how the market is anticipating the numbers and how it's responding to the data points we've seen already. Here's a quick snapshot on euro dollar. And as you can see, we've got weakness in the European single currency, and we've had a number of leaders on this morning from the EU talking about the fiscal response. Will it be enough? I mean, the German IHS Market Final Services PMI number in at 31.7. The flash was 34.5. It is weaker than the flash estimate we saw, and the final composite coming in at 35. Again, that is weaker than the flash estimate at 37.2. A reminder that these numbers represent reported business sentiment and activity at real businesses, and these are yet again weak numbers. So the data point that we are focused on for today, let me just remind you, as we pull away from the European story, we're looking out for the non-farm payrolls number later on in the day. The early suggestions, if we can take a quick look at the wall, Mr. Director. It's gone. Well, we've got the yields up here. We'll show you the 10-year yields just as we watch the reaction to the PMI numbers. And you can see that we are getting some buying back into the German Bund and the British Gilt as people look for a little bit of safety in the light of that weaker economic data. I tell you what, let's do that number on the non-farm payrolls in street signs, because that program is coming up right after this.
A lot of people treat their finances like their health, and for some reason they don't want to peel back.
It's Tune In Sports on this day, March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
But there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique to
listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this. Click on sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Did you know TuneIn doesn't just live here on your smart speaker? From the audio that moves you to the audio that gets you moving. Soundtrack your every movement with the free TuneIn app. Available on your phone or tablet. Download TuneIn from the App Store today.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to discover what's happening in the app and around the world. Be the first to know about upcoming games and the hottest new music. Follow @TuneIn and always be in the know.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Behind the highlight reels, championship rings, and colossal paychecks, there are sports stories that fuel, deepen, and even challenge our love for the game. For true tales of underdogs, anti-heroes, and game-changing innovators, explore a sports documentary on TuneIn, like Sports Wars, telling the origin stories of classic rivalries, Raise Sports, about the concussion crisis that threatens football's future, and Dunkumentaries, a podcast devoted to the beauty and power of the slam dunk. For these and more, search sports documentaries on TuneIn.
Metal utensil safe and won't scratch. And talk about non-stick. This salmon cooks skin side down with no added butter or oil, just doesn't stick. This steak is perfectly seared, just like the pros. And because granite stone is oven rated to 500 degrees, we bake this upside down pan pizza to perfection, and it just doesn't stick. Fire Flambe Delicious Cherries Jubilee. Plus it's PFOA free and 100% dishwasher safe. Call or go online to get your granite stone pan for the special TV discount price of just $19.99. Granite stone is so durable it comes with a 10-year warranty. And with every order, you're going to get a granite stone single-serve egg pan absolutely free. It's the perfect size for personalized eggs, omelets, or frittatas that slide right out. It makes the best bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich quick. Yours absolutely free. We'll even ship your entire order free. That's right, free shipping. You get it all at incredible value. Here's how to order.
To order, call 1-800-652-6109. That's 1-800-652-6109, or order online at buygranitestone.com. That's 1-800-652-6109. Call now.
Are you struggling with addiction? Do you need to detox? Is addiction controlling your life, hurting your loved ones? Don't be ashamed. Addiction is a disease that requires medical treatment. At Freedom from Addiction, we help people nationwide get free from addiction to alcohol, opioids, prescription medicine, narcotics, and more. Addiction is a disease.
Welcome to Street Signs. I'm Jeff Cutmore.
And I'm Juliana Tattlebaum. These are your headlines.
A services wipeout. Italian activity plunges at its sharpest rate on record. Spain hits an all-time low, and the sector sinks deeper into recession in France and Germany.
European oil majors sink as the crude prices retreat from a record rally amid skepticism over President Trump's announcement he's negotiated a significant production cut from Saudi Arabia and Russia.
Financials also among the biggest losers after BNP and Santander join a host of European banks dropping their payouts in a bid to shore up the sector's balance sheet.
The European Commission unveils a €100 billion work scheme to help countries hit hardest by the pandemic. And Luxembourg's finance minister tells CNBC spending is crucial.
The answer is, after the sanitary crisis, to invest. And that's what Europe is going to do.
So this European data, not very pretty this morning, but as a lot of people have expected, the numbers are coming in significantly weaker, but they're even weaker than the flash estimates that we saw quite recently. So the final composite PMI number coming in for the Eurozone from market at 29.7. The flash estimate was 31.4. The final services PMI 26.4. The estimate 28.4. The financial services PMI 26.4, the estimate 28.4. That is the lowest level for the financial services sector since the survey began. The numbers, again, reinforcing this impression of a collapse in business activity in the Eurozone. Final services business expectations 33.5, the flash estimate 34.8. And just by terms of comparison, the February number on that was 61.3. So a near halving of business expectations. And again, where are the green shoots? The new business composite new business PMI 27.7, the flash estimate 29.5, the February survey 51.2. Many of these numbers are now ratcheting up the expectations for further declines. I mean, it does show you the pace at which workers also will have been let go at this point, and these numbers represent survey lows. So with the lockdown appearing to be set for some time here, it does feel as though business optimism is wilting at this point, Juliana.
Well, indeed. And I think first thing on the numbers themselves, these are deviating fairly significantly from the flash estimates relative to what we usually see, just demonstrating how much has changed since the flash numbers came out. And then second thing I would say, we've been discussing all morning the European response to this crisis with regards to the job schemes put in place. And now it's going to be a question of how the execution of those schemes actually goes, and whether we will see the funds provided in the schemes created actually reaching the people who are affected by the lockdowns and those whose jobs are at risk in the Eurozone.
Let's bring in Jean Tirole, Honorary Chairman of the J.J. Lafont Toulouse School of Economics and 2014 Economics Nobel Prize laureate. So welcome to our program. Obviously, the data points that we're seeing here across the PMI series for the Eurozone make very ugly reading at this point. Is there anything that we can take away from these numbers as a crumb of comfort? I mean, you could argue that they represent a relatively brief moment in time. We're seeing an awful lot of stimulus coming to the table.
Well, I think rather than stimulus, we need to help the fragile, so the people who lose their job, cannot find another one, the small and medium enterprises which cannot function anymore, the banks and financial institutions. And that's what it's about. It's basically about solving in the short run economic distress. The stimulus itself will come afterwards, because at this stage, there is not much activity that you can stimulate anyway because of confinement. And that's going to mean that, of course, we'll have a big public debt issue afterwards, but that we will take care afterwards.
We listened to the finance minister of Luxembourg on the program here, and we also had Mr. Dombrovskis on from the Commission, and both of them appear to be suggesting that what's been done so far is enough to address the current distress that we're seeing with economies. What's your perspective?
Well, at this stage, I think we have to be humble, because first, we don't know when the pandemic is going to stop, how long it will take. It will take a month, like a year. So we have to be flexible in many ways. And then we will see. I mean, the ECB reaction, for example, has been very good to try to do whatever it takes to solve issues. And there will be the aftermath, which will be more difficult. But at this stage, I think the governments and the central banks are doing what they should be doing.